Star Wars, Young Jedi Knights, Darkest Night, Chapter 5. Why, certainly, Master Lobaka, I'd be happy to be of service in such a manner, EMTD said as they approached Kashyyyk. Calculation of that trajectory is really quite simple. Loic accepted the finding from the little droid and input it manually into the Shadow Tracer's control panel. Beside him, his uncle drew in a deep, happy breath when the rich, brown-green planet appeared in the viewport, as if anticipating the smells and tastes and sounds of home. Despite the heavy heart with which he was returning, Loie also felt a rush of excitement and pleasure. He would soon be in the safe, peaceful treetops of Kashyyyk. Well done, Masters Lobaka and Chewbacca, EMTD caroled. Loie grunted an absent-minded acknowledgement, still captivated by the sight of his planet. It looked much the same as it had on the day he left his uncle and Han Solo and in the Millennium Falcon to become a Jedi student. How long ago is it now? Too long. Loie's yearning to see his family again became almost overwhelming. The two Wookiees worked at the piloting controls with an urgency that came from happy anticipation. As the Shadow Chaser approached the thick canopy below, Chewbacca pointed out with a certain wistfulness toward the treetop city in which he and Loie's mother had grown up. With all of Loie's travels across the galaxy, Lobaka wondered if his uncle ever felt as homesick as he himself occasionally did on Yavin 4. He knew Chewbacca would somehow find the time to visit his own city and the rest of his family in the next day or so. Behind him, the twins and Tenel Ka exerted examinations of admiration at the beauty of Kashyyyk and the size of the trees. Even though I've been here before, I always forget how big they are, Jaina murmured, pressing her fingers against the viewport. Impressive, Tenel Ka agreed. But where are the cities? Chewbacca let the sleek ship dip a bit lower, and Loie pointed to where clusters of high trees extended their crowns above the lower canopies. Nestled in the masses of thick branches, gleaming towers, and platforms were visible signs of habitation that folded into the natural formation of the trees. Ah, she said, sounding somewhat surprised. Aha! Neat, huh? Jason said, leaning closer to the warrior girl. They like to make nature and technology work together. Loie growled in his agreement. Master Lobaka points out that the technology and nature need not be mutually exclusive, the EMTD translated. Blending the two can be more pleasant than separating them. When he finally caught sight of his home city, Loie felt a renewed impatience. It was all he could do to keep himself from unbuckling his crash webbing while Chewbacca guided the damaged ship toward the nearest landing platform. The moment the Shadow Chaser touched down, Lobaka sprang from his co-pilot's seat and rushed to the exit hatch. Through the cockpit window, he could see his family waiting for him on the platform. His father, Makarakor, his mother, Kalabalo, and his younger sister, Sirakuk. Loie opened the hatch and stood in the sunlight for a split second, taking in every detail, sniffing the air, letting his eyes be bombarded by the rich greens and browns of the treetops. Then he and his family all roared greetings. His parents looked well and happy, if a little tired. His mother's kind blue eyes, surrounded by auburn whorls of fur, shone with pride. The dark streak in his father's fur showed no signs of graying with age. Only his sister looked different, taller, sleeker, and prettier than he had remembered her, but with a heavy sadness about her. Sira had trimmed her fur in unusual patterns. She had shaved decorative designs around her head and arms, but her fangs were white and sharp, her fur around her nose and mouth well-groomed and long. She was definitely growing up. His father raised both arms above his head and bellowed another greeting. Loie roared back and ran toward them. Jason looked around the dining table in consternation. Wishing for the 10th time he understood the Wookiee language better. Ensconced between Loie and Sira, he looked across the table to where Jaina and Tenel Ka sat on either side of Chewbacca. He wondered if they felt as confused and overwhelmed as he did in the middle of a loud and incomprehensible dinner conversation. Transparent mesh cages filled with swarms of tiny, luminescent bugs hugged from the ceiling branches, providing a fuzzy, warm light. Exotic species and incense wafted around the room and out the window notches into the humid air. The air was thick with mouth-watering smells of the welcome meal Loie's parents had prepared. The table was a huge slab of wood, a slice from a broad-boled tree. Its hypnotic concentric rings indicated how long the tree had lived. All the chairs and furniture in Loie's home seemed overlarge, built for bodies much taller than the average human. Jason shifted uncomfortably on the high bench at the table. Something finally clicked in his head. Hey, where's the MTV? He asked. We could really use his translating skills here. Jane is flushed. Her mouth formed a small of surprise. I guess that's kind of my fault. I kind of borrowed him and hooked him up to Shadow Chaser's diagnostics so he'd give us a readout of the parts we need to repair the ship. She bit a lower lip. I suppose it would have been more polite to wait after we had the chance to chat with Chloe's family for a while. Jason shrugged and squeezed his eyes shut. He tried to concentrate in the new environment to pick out individual words. With 5 Wookiees barking, bellowing, growling, and roaring, it was difficult to make sense of their speech. He took a slow breath and tried to relax, planning to reach out with the force to see if he could sense some meaning in the conversation. Outside, Jason could hear a warm afternoon of rain running gentle fingers through the leaves of the stately worship trees. Inside, the battle of noises continued, strange voices mixing with unfamiliar ones. In the undertones, he felt joy and apprehension, hope and sorrow. He felt the touch of a furred hand on his arm. Jason looked up in embarrassment to find Chloe's sister, Sierra, holding out a platter laden with roasted meats and vegetables. Sierra uttered a polite but curious woof. Blaster bolts, I'm sorry, is that plate for me? Chloe chuffed a laugh and then swept a hand around the table to indicate that everyone else had already been served. Each of the Wookiees' plates was filled with coarsely chopped fresh meat and mounds of raw vegetables. Jaina had a platter of food similar to his own, while Tenel Ka held a mixture of vegetables and meats, both cooked and raw. Jason was amused to note that Tenel Ka's appetite reflected the conflicting preferences of her primitive and refined upbringings. Calaballo and Macrocor had worked hard to accommodate the dietary preferences of their human guests. Jason accepted the platter from Sierra and thanked her. Then the Wookiees all fell silent, expectant, and turned to Lobaka. He held one furry hand over his plate of food as he crooned a few short phrases in a low voice. Jason recognized the Wookiee ceremonial speech of thankfulness that he had heard from Chewbacca so often. Lowy stood then, raised his arms high, and spread his hands, forming the protective leaf canopy over his family and friends, and repeated his brief speech. Lowy's mother crooned a sad, low note. Moments later, both Wookiees and humans attacked their food as if none of them had a decent meal for weeks. The next day, Jaina murmured something noncommittal and looked dubiously at the list that EMTD had downloaded to her datapad. Jason and Tenel Ka sat near her in Lowy's spacious room, which had been hollowed out from a part of a massive worship tree. Lowy disconnected the lead wires from the diagnostics panel, tucked them back into EMTD's casing, and closed it with a snap. While Jaina and Lowy worked together to catalog the Shadow Chaser's ills, Chewbacca had taken the opportunity to go to the other side of the planet to visit the rest of his family, whom he had not seen in some time. A few leftover splatters of rain from another brief shower dripped outside the open window. Sierra sat with them, her patchy fur standing on end. She didn't want to be alone, apparently, but she didn't participate much in the conversation either. Take a look at this, Lowy, Jaina said, holding up the datapad. The Wookiee studied the list of ruined components with a thoughtful growl. Jason and Tenel Ka crowded in to get a look as well. Jason flashed his sister a mischievous grin. Hard to believe that an itty-bitty iron storm could cause so much damage, huh? Jaina sent him a withering look. If that furry pet of yours hadn't chewed out all the circuits. Hey, that's not fair. I'd never seen her before. We left the oven before. Jason moved the fluffy creature from the temporary cage he had made for her and her babies. The little 8-legged rodent seemed very pleased with the soft new nest. She didn't mean to cause any trouble, did you, Ion? He held the fluffy ball close to his face and stroked her with one finger. The tiny creature made a faint cooing sound. Jason would set the rodent free when they returned to Yavin 4, but for now he would take good care of her. The fault was not Jason's, Tenel Ka said in a mild voice, and blaming the creature serves no purpose. Jaina shrugged one shoulder. Yeah, I know, I'm sorry. Just don't let Chewie catch sight of that pesky little thing when he gets back. Lowy handed the datapad to Jaina with a confident bark. Master Lobaka believes that we can obtain most of these parts from the local fabrication facility or create reasonable substitutes, EMTD said. Jaina felt hopeful. You mean the factory where your parents work? Blaster bolts, Jason said. Are you sure? There's a lot of stuff on that list. What do they make at your factory anyway? Lowy gestured with his hands and growled in answer. Jaina could vaguely sense what he was saying. The EMTD said, the fabrication facility that employs Master Lobaka's parents, as well as most of the other inhabitants of the city, produces a variety of sophisticated computer equipment for use in a wide range of transportation applications. Jaina's interest sharpened at the idea of a factory filled with exotic and complex systems. Like what? Jason asked, placing Ian back in her cage. Little Rogue inspected her grubs rooted around in her fuzzy nest. After more of Loe's growlings and gesticulations, EMT said, among other things, the facility produces guidance control systems for planetary control towers, navigational subsystems and backups, tackle systems, communication, encryption generators, multi-physic. Hey, I think we get the idea. Thanks, EMT, Jason broke in. Jaina tried to suppress a chuckle. Her ever-curious brother had gotten more explanation than he had bargained for. Loe, is there any way we can move the Shadow Chaser closer to your home so we can work on it more easily? The hangar bay where we store it's on way on the other side of the nest. Not a city, not very convenient, if you know what I mean. Loe shook his head but growled a suggestion. Master Lubaka proposes. Yeah, I think I got it, Jane said, struggling to understand a few of the rookie words. We can pull out the damaged subsystems one at a time, bring them here to Loe's house, and work on them. That's a great idea. So what are we waiting for?